The sun was already low when the Cadillac Escalade rolled to a stop on County Road 421, smoke curling from under the hood in thin white ribbons. Claire Weston stepped out, her heels sinking into the red clay shoulder the moment she left the asphalt. She held her phone up. One bar. Then none. The road stretched in both directions without a house, a gas station, or another human being in sight. She had taken the back route on purpose. She had needed one day, just one, without anyone calling her name, and the county road had seemed like a reasonable shortcut on the map. That was 45 minutes ago. A truck appeared around the bend, an older Ford F-150 that had been worked hard for many years, and showed it. It slowed without her flagging it down and pulled to a stop behind her car. The man who got out was tall, with the kind of build that came from actual labor rather than a gym. He did not ask if she needed help. He looked at the car once, walked to the front, and leaned over the engine. 15 minutes later, it turned over. She held out a $200 bill. He looked at it. Then he looked at her, not unkindly, not with judgment. Just a flat, clear look that said the bill was not part of any equation he was working with. "No need," he said. He got in his truck and drove away. She stood there with the money still in her hand, watching taillights disappear into the dust. In 34 years, no one had refused something she offered. Not like that. Not without a word more than two. The helicopter arrived the following morning at 7:14, coming in low over the tree line and banking toward the flat ground behind the horse barn. Cole Merritt was at the kitchen window with his coffee when it passed overhead, and he watched it settle into the field with the unhurried attention of a man who had already decided how to feel about this. His daughter Sadie came out of her bedroom at a run, sock feet sliding on the wood floor, and pressed her face to the glass. "Is that a helicopter?" "Looks like." "Is it landing on our field?" "Looks like." She was already pulling her shoes on before he could say anything else. Two men in dark suits stepped out first and held the door when Claire came down. She had dressed for a meeting again, which was the only mode she knew. Cole set his coffee down, watched his daughter's back as she ran toward the gate, and followed at his own pace. Sadie reached the fence first and positioned herself with both hands on her hips, studying the nearer of the two suited men with the frank assessment of a 7-year-old who had not yet learned to be polite about confusion. "Who said you could land on our cornfield?" she asked. The man opened his mouth. Claire, who had been walking behind him, stopped walking. It was not the question itself. It was the total absence of performance in it. No shyness, no calculation, just a child who wanted an actual answer to a reasonable question. Claire put her hand over her mouth, and the laugh that came out was not the one she used at dinners or press events. It came from somewhere lower, and it surprised her. Cole arrived at the gate and looked at his daughter, then at the woman with her hand pressed to her mouth and her shoulders shaking slightly. "Sadie," he said, "I'm asking a real question, Dad." "I know you are. Go inside." Sadie went, but not before giving the suited men one final look that communicated she was not finished with the subject. Cole opened the gate, and Claire composed herself. She explained why she had come. She had run the plates on his truck and wanted to thank him properly, to do something for the farm rather than drive away with a wave. Cole listened. Then he said, "That's not necessary." He turned back toward the house. From the porch came a small voice. "Dad, the guest hasn't had any water yet." He stopped. He stood there in the morning light for a moment. Then he turned around and held the door open. They sat at the kitchen table with black coffee and nothing else. The radio on the counter was playing something old and quiet. It was a working kitchen, a calendar on the wall, a coffee ring on the table that had been there long enough to stop bothering anyone. Claire's eyes moved along the shelves by habit, and then they stopped. The photograph was tucked between a mason jar and a coffee tin on the top shelf, slightly crooked. Cole was younger in it, wearing a jacket and tie, and next to him, laughing with his whole face, was her father, Gerald Weston. Not the portrait version, not the boardroom version. Her father the way he looked when something actually struck him as funny. She set her mug down slowly. Cole was watching her. "You knew my father," she said. It came out flat because she was still processing it. "I worked with him," Cole said. "Long time ago." He did not add anything to that. He wrapped both hands around his mug and looked at the table. And she understood this was the end of what he was willing to say right now. She did not push. She drove back to Louisville that afternoon with the radio off. The personnel archive was on the 4th floor in a room that smelled of paper and climate control, and Claire had never been inside it. Her assistant handled records requests. The HR department handled records. There was an entire layer of people between her and the filing cabinets, which was how it was supposed to work, and she had never found reason to question it. She found reason now. She had gone first to the executive summary binders, the condensed personnel histories prepared for her during the transition period in 2017. She remembered those binders. She had tried to read them during her first week, during a stretch of days when grief was sitting on her chest like something with weight, and everything was happening at once. She had gotten through most of it. She thought she had gotten through most of it. She was looking for the COO listing. Weston Enterprises was a company of 400 employees and $48 million in annual revenue. It did not operate without a chief operating officer. There was no COO listed for the period between 2012 and 2017. She pulled the binder again and checked twice. Then she went to the archive room and found the physical files herself. Cole Merritt. The folder was thin. No disciplinary documentation, no internal investigation report, no witness statements, no audit trail of a misconduct process, nothing that would normally exist in a termination for cause file. There was one sheet of paper with a typed summary and a signature line at the bottom that was supposed to carry an HR representative's initials. It did not. She went back upstairs and called Douglas Hale from her office. He picked up on the second ring, which he always did. His voice was the same as it always was measured, confident, the voice of someone who had been answering difficult questions for a long time and had stopped finding them difficult. Cole Merritt, she said. A brief pause that was not really a pause. Embezzlement. Internal. We handled it through proper channels. The documentation was thorough. I can pull everything together if you'd like a refresher. I'd like the complete file. 24 hours. Of course, he said. Is there something specific that prompted this? No, she said. Just doing my homework. She hung up. On the other side of the city, in an office 12 floors above street level, Douglas Hale held the phone for a moment after the call ended. Then he dialed his personal attorney and told him to push the closing timeline on the Bridgewater portfolio sale forward by 2 weeks. $340 million in commercial real estate. A transaction that had been moving through legal review for 4 months needed to close faster. There were things in that transaction's underlying structure that a thorough external audit might eventually surface, and he preferred they not be surfaced. Then he made a second call. The message he sent to Ruth Alderman was delivered not by phone but by a man who drove out to Harlan County and knocked on her door that evening. Some things were better left where they were. He said it pleasantly. He smiled when he said it. He left, without waiting for an answer. Ruth Alderman stood at her front window and watched the car back out of her driveway, and she stood there for a long time after it was gone. 8 years she had kept that envelope. She had told herself she was honoring Gerald's instructions, waiting for the right moment. Standing at the window now, watching the road, she wondered if she had also been waiting for someone to make the decision easier. Tonight, without meaning to, Douglas Hale had done exactly that. Claire came back to Harlan County 2 days later. She did not call ahead. She drove herself in a different car, a sedan, no driver, no assistance, and she arrived just before noon without any plan for what she was going to say. Cole was in the side yard, working on the tractor, crouched beside the rear axle with a wrench. Sadie was on the porch with a sketchbook, drawing something with the absolute focus that children bring to creative work before anyone tells them to be self-conscious about it. She looked up when the car turned into the drive. "You came back," Sadie said. "I did. Is it because of the helicopter or because of Dad?" Cole's wrench stopped moving. Claire considered the question with genuine seriousness. "I'm not entirely sure," she said. Sadie accepted this and went back to her drawing. Cole straightened up slowly, wiping his hands, and looked at Claire across the yard. He did not ask what she wanted. He just waited. They talked for a long time, longer than Claire had planned on sitting in the two chairs on the side of the house that caught the afternoon shade. She asked him about her father, not about the company, not about strategy or acquisitions, or the quarterly reviews she had read in the transition binders. She asked what he was like on a Tuesday morning, what he found funny, what he cared about when no one was watching him care. Cole talked in the way he seemed to do everything carefully, without waste, choosing what to offer and what to keep. He said her father had been the kind of man who remembered the names of maintenance staff and called people back himself when he said he would. He said Gerald had a habit of going quiet before he made a decision that mattered, the way some people close their eyes to think. He said the man had been the best kind of boss because he never made you feel managed. The afternoon moved without either of them tracking it. Sadie brought out 2 glasses of lemonade at some point and set them on the ground between the chairs and went back inside, which seemed to be her particular way of participating in adult situations. She did not want to leave entirely. When Claire finally stood to go, the light had gone gold and long. Cole walked her to the car. He did not fill the silence with anything, and she found that she did not want him to. She was 20 minutes down the highway when the email notification appeared on her phone, mounted on the dashboard. She pulled over to read it. Douglas Hale had delivered the personnel file, 47 pages, formatted and tabbed, everything exactly where it should be. She scrolled through it quickly, the way she read documents when she was looking for the shape of something rather than the detail. She found the shape on page 3, the authorization signature on the termination order, hers, in the looping hand she had used before she simplified it, dated the 11th day of February, 2017. She had been CEO for 11 days. She sat on the shoulder of the road and tried to remember that week. She remembered almost nothing of it except the particular quality of the exhaustion, the stack of folders her assistant had brought each morning, the way she had signed things because things needed to be signed, and she did not yet know how to ask which things required her full attention. She had trusted the system. She had trusted the people in the system. She put the car in drive and kept going. Ruth Alderman knocked on Cole's door the following morning, and when he opened it he could see from her face that she had made up her mind about something. She came in without being asked and sat at the kitchen table and told him directly. She had a sealed envelope that Gerald Weston had given her 8 years ago. Gerald's instructions had been specific: open it when someone from the Weston side comes looking for Cole. In 8 years, no one ever had. Until Claire Weston drove down that road 2 days ago. Then last night a man had knocked on Ruth's door and told her to leave things alone, and that had settled it for her. She was done waiting. Cole told her he didn't want it. He said he had built something here, small as it was, and he was not interested in digging up what had been buried. He said he had a daughter who was 7 years old and hummed to herself while she did her chores and did not know a single thing about what had happened 7 years ago, and he wanted to keep it that way. Ruth looked at him evenly and said, "You have 60 days on this property before the bank takes it." Sadie doesn't know. I do. He looked out the window. Sadie was in the side garden with the hose, watering the tomato plants in the particular inefficient way she had developed. More water on her shoes than on the soil. She was humming something to herself, a song she had heard on the radio, the words mangled the way children mangle things they love. She had been doing that lately, humming while she worked, and Cole had started listening for it in the mornings, the way you listen for weather, taking it as a sign that the day was still okay. He had gotten the letter from the bank the previous Tuesday. He had sat at this same table and read the number, the exact amount outstanding, the timeline, the language about foreclosure proceedings, and then he had folded the letter and put it in the drawer beneath the silverware and not looked at it since. He had been adding up options in the back of his mind, the way a person does when they don't want to sit down and do the math directly. There were no good options. He knew that already. He just hadn't said it out loud yet. "Okay," he said. Ruth opened the envelope. The document inside was 2 pages, handwritten in columns the way Gerald had always organized his personal notes, dates on the left, figures in the middle, observations on the right. It was an audit, informal but precise, of a series of budget line items from the period between January and October of 2016. The irregularities Gerald had flagged pointed to a single department. A single name appeared in the margin notation at the bottom of the second page, circled twice. Below it, in Gerald's hand, Cole knows where to look. There was no mention of Claire. No instructions. No named recipient. No roadmap. Just a dead man's last clear-eyed look at something wrong, preserved in an envelope because he had run out of time to do anything more with it. Cole held the pages for a long time without speaking. Sadie came in from the garden and found the two of them sitting in silence at the table, the way adults sometimes sat when something heavy had landed and nobody had figured out yet how to lift it. "Is something sad happening?" she asked. Cole looked up. "No," he said. "There's just something that needs doing." The man who arrived 2 days later drove a gray sedan and parked at the end of the gravel drive without pulling in. Cole recognized him from across the field before he was close enough to see his face recognize the way he moved, the particular set of the shoulders. His name was Gary Pruitt, and Cole had eaten lunch with him 100 times in the Weston Group cafeteria. They had talked about baseball and mortgage rates, and what to do about the vending machine on the third floor that ate dollar bills. Cole had considered him a friend, or something close enough to it that the difference hadn't mattered at the time. Cole went inside and picked up his phone and pressed record before walking back out. Gary delivered the message without much preamble. This was, Cole understood, a man performing an uncomfortable task and wanting to be done with it. The offer was simple: Cole's silence in exchange for a sum sufficient to retire his outstanding mortgage and leave a remainder. He did not use Douglas Hale's name, but he did not need to. Cole let him finish. Then he said, "How far did Doug push the Bridgewater closing? 2 weeks? 3? Gary's expression did not change, but his eyes shifted a small, involuntary movement that lasted less than a second. "I'll take that as 3, Cole said. Gary turned to go. He paused at the edge of the drive and looked toward the horse barn, where Sadie had appeared in the opening, brushing down the old mare with a plastic-handled brush. She was talking to the horse in a low, steady voice, the way she always did. She had no idea anyone was watching. Gary did not say anything. He got in his car and left. Cole stood in the kitchen and looked at his phone, the recording still running, and pressed stop. He had gone back and forth about this for days, telling himself he did not want the fight, telling himself Sadie was better off in a quiet life than in the crossfire of something he had walked away from 7 years ago. But Gary had looked at his daughter the same way a man looks at a piece of leverage, and that was the end of Cole's deliberation. He found Claire's number and called it. "I need to meet with you," he said. "Today." "Not at your office." She arrived 3 hours later. He had spread Ruth's documents across the kitchen table by the time she knocked the audit pages, the envelope, and the folded letter from the bank that he had retrieved from the silverware drawer and placed to one side. Not to show her, just because it felt dishonest to leave it hidden while asking her to look at something else. She sat down and read. She was the kind of reader who did not move much, just her eyes, tracking across the page, occasionally going back. When she reached the margin notation at the bottom of the second page, she stopped. Her father's handwriting was something she would have known in any context. She had grown up watching him write grocery lists, birthday cards, the occasional check he still wrote by hand long after everyone else had stopped. The particular way he formed his capital letters, the slight leftward lean of his script, she would have known it anywhere. This was not a document anyone had manufactured. Her father had sat down and written this. He knew, she said. He knew something was wrong, Cole said. He didn't know how far it went. I think he was trying to build a case before he brought it to anyone. She turned the page over as if there might be more on the back. There wasn't. Cole came back with a second document, a photocopy from the file Ruth had also kept, a duplicate of the termination order. Her signature. February 11th. She looked at it for a long time. I signed a stack of documents my first week, she said. I didn't read all of them. She stopped. Tried again. I should have read all of them. I know, Cole said. I'm not asking you to absolve me. I know that too. She looked up at him. How long did you think I knew? When I first showed up here, did you think I was part of it? Cole was quiet for a moment. I didn't know, he said honestly. That's why I didn't say anything." She pushed back from the table and walked to the window. The sun was going down over the ridge, the sky shifting through colors it only reached for a few minutes each evening. She stood there long enough that the light changed. She thought about the 11th day of February, 2017. She had been in the middle of a week, where everything arrived at once, and nothing felt real. The meeting with the board chair, the attorneys, the stack of transition documents her assistant had arranged by urgency. Someone had handed her a pen and told her these needed signatures before the close of business. She had signed because her name was needed, and because the world had not paused to let her grieve. She understood now that Douglas Hale had known exactly what that week would look like. He had planned around it, had been planning around it since the moment her father collapsed. She turned around. "I want you to come back to the company. I need people I can trust, and right now, I don't have many. You know the systems. You know the history." "No," Cole said. The word was quiet, but it had no give in it. "Cole, I trusted that company," he said. "I trusted your father, and I'm glad I did, because he was worth trusting. But I lost everything I had during the 2 years after they let me go. My wife was sick and I was spending what little I had left on." He stopped. "Started again. I'm not going back. Not for any version of that offer." Claire did not say anything for a moment. She had not known the last part, had not known about the wife, or the timing, or what the years after had looked like. She had walked in here thinking she was bringing him something. She understood now that what she was actually doing was standing in front of the evidence of what her signature had cost him, and there was nothing useful she could say about that. "I'm sorry," she said. "It was not a corporate apology. It was the other kind." "I know you are," he said. "That's not the same thing as it not having happened." They ended the evening like that, no resolution, no warmth on the way out. Cole walked her to the car in silence, and she got in and drove away, and he stood at the end of the drive listening to the engine fade into the dark. Inside, Sadie was curled on the arm of the couch, looking out the window with her chin resting on her forearms. "Is she coming back?" she asked. Cole looked at her for a moment. Then he went to the kitchen and turned off the light without answering, which Sadie, being Sadie, understood was not the same thing as no. She did not go home that night. She went to her office on the 14th floor of the building her father had leased when Claire was 12 years old, and she sat down at his old desk, the one she had kept, because she could not bring herself to replace it, and she called the attorney she had used for her own personal matters since 2019, not the firm on retainer for Weston Enterprises, her lawyer. He came in at 9:30 with a yellow legal pad, and she walked him through everything. The audit document, the timeline, the termination order, the recorded conversation. Cole had sent the audio file to her phone before she left Harlan County, without commentary, just the file. The previous evening, before any of this, she had also contacted a forensic document examiner and sent photographs of Gerald's handwriting samples alongside the audit pages. The authentication report had come back by email at 11 that night. Consistent authorship, high confidence. They worked through the financial records until after midnight, pulling the original budget submissions from 2016 alongside the consolidated reports that had gone to the board. Gerald's notation pointed them in the right direction, and once they were looking in the right place, the pattern was not difficult to find. $28 million, distributed across 14 budget categories over the course of 3 fiscal years, hidden in the ordinary-looking rounding errors and allocation adjustments of a company large enough that no single department would notice any one piece. Douglas Hale had been meticulous. But Gerald Weston had also been meticulous, and he had seen it first. Her phone lit up twice while she was working. Both times it was Douglas, the second call at 11:15, reminding her that the Bridgewater closing required her executive sign-off by end of week. She let both go to voicemail. At 12:47 in the morning, she opened a new email to Cole. She told him she had found enough. She told him she needed him there in the morning, not at the office, at the building, with Ruth, with the documents. She told him that if he didn't want to come, she understood. She pressed send and went back to the spreadsheet. In Harlan County, Cole's phone lit up on the porch railing where he had left it when he came outside after Sadie went to sleep. He had been out there for 2 hours with a glass of water he had stopped drinking, listening to the sounds the property made at night, the horse shifting in the barn, the insects, the wind moving through what was left of the field corn. He had been thinking about the look on Claire's face when she said she didn't know his name had existed until 2 days ago. He believed her. That was the part he hadn't expected, that he would believe her, that it would matter, that the believing would make the rest of it more complicated instead of less. He read the email once. Then he went inside and called Ruth. He asked if she would drive up in the morning and be there in person, not just for the documents, but in case the board needed someone who could speak to the chain of custody, who could confirm that the envelope had come directly from Gerald and had never been opened. Ruth said she would be ready at 5. He checked on Sadie, still asleep, one arm thrown over the edge of the mattress, and then he got in the truck and drove north toward Louisville through the dark. Cole arrived before the building opened. He waited in the lobby until Claire came down to meet him, and they rode the elevator up together without talking. Ruth had driven herself and was already waiting in the hallway outside the conference room, sitting in one of the chairs along the wall with her coat still on and her hands folded in her lap, looking like she had been waiting for this specific morning for a long time. Cole had not been inside this building in 7 years. He walked through the lobby and past the security desk and into the elevator, and none of it required the effort he had expected. It was just a building. Whatever it had meant to him once was not stored in the architecture. He walked past the conference room on the 3rd floor, the one with the long mahogany table and the frosted glass wall, without stopping to look. Claire's attorney presented the documentation to the board in an emergency session convened by electronic notice the previous evening. The board's 3 independent directors arrived with expressions that suggested they had not slept well. The presentation took 40 minutes. The audit document, with the forensic authentication report confirming Gerald Weston's authorship, the budget analysis showing the distribution pattern across 14 accounts, the audio recording of the conversation at the farm, a summary opinion from an independent accounting firm confirming that the pattern identified in Gerald's audit was consistent with deliberate misallocation at the CFO level. Ruth sat in the back of the room and said nothing, available if called upon and never needed. Douglas Hale sat at the far end of the table and listened to all of it with the stillness of someone who has rehearsed staying still. When the board chair asked if he wished to respond, he said he would need to speak with his attorney before making any statement. He was asked to leave the room. His access credentials were suspended effective immediately. He walked out past Cole, who was standing along the near wall. Douglas stopped. He looked at Cole for a moment, not angry, not pleading, just looking. The way you might look at a piece of weather you had been expecting. Then he walked to the elevator and was gone. 20 minutes later, as Claire was preparing to return to the conference room, her phone rang. She saw the name and answered. Douglas's voice was controlled and even. He told her that what she was doing would damage the company's standing with its lenders, that the Bridgewater deal represented the single most important liquidity event in Weston Enterprises' recent history, and that she was 29 days away from a covenant review with 2 institutional creditors who would not react well to this kind of internal disruption. He said she was young and she was grieving. He actually used the word grieving, 8 years after her father's death, and that she should take some time before making decisions. She could not walk back. She listened to the whole thing. Then she ended the call and went back into the room. She stood at the head of the table and told the board that the company had operated with a significant internal control failure for a period of 7 or more years, and that the responsibility for that failure was not exclusively Douglas Hale's. She said she had trusted a system without verifying it, and that she intended to commission a comprehensive external audit beginning the following Monday. She said the Bridgewater transaction would remain on hold until the audit was complete, and that she would not be signing any documentation related to it in the interim. The board chair said that the motion to suspend Douglas Hale pending investigation was seconded and carried. After the session ended, Claire found Cole in the hallway. He was pulling on his jacket, already pointed toward the elevator and the long drive back south, and there was something in the way he moved, contained, purposeful, that told her she had a narrow window. She told him she wanted to discuss compensation, the termination settlement, the years of lost income, the mortgage on the farm. The company owed him that, and she wanted to make it right. He told her he didn't want money from Weston Enterprises. "It's not from the company," she said. "It's from me." He looked at her. It was the same look he had given the $200 bill on County Road 421, not unkind, just honest. She was beginning to understand that this was simply how he looked at things he had already decided about. Her attorney stepped in before the silence could harden into a refusal. He explained that Cole had substantial grounds for a wrongful termination claim, that Weston Enterprises would be the named respondent, and that any settlement would be a matter of legal obligation rather than personal generosity. It was not a favor. It was a correction of a 7-year-old wrong, and Cole had earned the right to let the law do what it was designed to do. The money would come from the company's legal exposure, not from anyone's conscience. Cole stood there with his jacket half on and listened to all of it. He was the kind of man who gave things their proper time before answering. Claire had figured that out by now. He nodded once, slowly. His phone rang in his jacket pocket. He pulled it out and looked at the screen, and something in his expression changed, a particular softening that she had not seen on his face in any other context. He answered, "Hey, Bug," a small voice on the other end, audible even from where Claire was standing. "Dad, is Miss Claire there? Does she know how to make pancakes?" Cole's eyes moved to Claire. She had heard every word. She was looking at a point approximately 6 inches to the left of his face and working very hard at a neutral expression. "Why do you ask?" he said into the phone. "Because I want to teach her," Sadie said, with the matter-of-fact certainty of someone announcing a plan that has already been finalized and simply requires the other parties to catch up. Cole watched Claire look at the ceiling. "Saturday," he said. "Saturday, she might be available." He paused. "Sadie, say goodbye." "Bye, Miss Claire," Sadie said, apparently satisfied that the logistics were now handled. He put the phone away. Claire was looking at him now, no longer pretending to look elsewhere. "Saturday," he said. "Sadie doesn't have anything going on." He turned and walked to the elevator without explaining what that meant, or what he was offering, or whether it was an invitation, or simply a statement of fact. The elevator doors opened and he stepped in, and the doors closed again, and Claire stood in the hallway in the sudden quiet of the building's upper floor. It was the second time she had watched him walk away from her without knowing what to do next. The first time, on County Road 421, she had stood there holding $200 and felt something shift in a way she could not name. This time she was not holding anything. She stayed there for a moment. Then she smiled, not the public one, the other one, and turned back toward the conference room to finish what she had started. The independent audit took 11 weeks. What it found was not a surprise to anyone who had been in the room on the morning of the board meeting, but seeing it fully documented changed the shape of the thing. $41 million across 7 years, obscured in ordinary-looking adjustments that had passed through 3 rounds of annual review without anyone pulling the thread. The Bridgewater portfolio sale was terminated. The underlying assets had been misstated in the valuation, and the transaction documents were referred to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Douglas Hale was indicted on 2 counts of securities fraud and 1 count of breach of fiduciary duty. He retained a defense attorney from Chicago and made no public statements. Cole filed a wrongful termination claim in the 3rd week of October. Weston Enterprises did not contest it. The settlement included the sum necessary to retire the outstanding mortgage on the Harlan County property, plus an additional amount that Cole put into a college account in Sadie's name. He signed the paperwork on a Thursday and drove home the same day. He did not tell Sadie about the mortgage or what had almost happened to the farm. Some things a 7-year-old did not need to carry. He declined the offer to return to Weston Enterprises. He stayed in Harlan County. He fixed the tractor. He bought a new water pump for the barn. He let himself sleep past 6 on Sunday mornings. Ruth went home after the board meeting and built a small fire in the stone fireplace and fed the envelope into it. When the paper was ash, she made herself a cup of tea and sat in the chair by the window. She did not call anyone. Claire started the drive to Harlan County most Friday afternoons. She told her assistant she was unavailable on weekends. Cole stopped scheduling anything for Saturday mornings, though he did not explain this to anyone. The first Saturday, Sadie sat up at the kitchen counter with the mixing bowl and the measuring cups arranged by size, and announced that they were going to make buttermilk pancakes and that everyone needed to pay attention. Claire paid attention. She got the flour right and the buttermilk approximately right and then miscalculated the baking powder, and Sadie said no, no, no in the tone of a very patient instructor reaching the limits of her patience, and Claire overcorrected, and a significant quantity of the dry mix went off the edge of the bowl and landed in Claire's hair. Sadie set down her measuring spoon and looked at the ceiling. Cole was standing in the doorway. He had come in from outside while this was happening and stopped there with his arms crossed, watching. Sadie turned and saw him. "Dad." "She made a mess. I can see that." Claire turned around. Flour on her temple, flour on the shoulder of the flannel shirt she had started keeping in her car for these weekends. She did not reach up to brush it away. She just looked at him. He came to the counter and slid the bowl across to her without looking at her. She took it without asking what any of this meant. Cole reached past her for the whisk. The radio was on. The morning light came through the window low and sideways. Nobody said anything more, and nobody needed to.